Going on down to AfterBuzz, gonna talk your favorite show.
Friendly hosts everywhere, humble talks without flirtation.
Going on down to AfterBuzz, gonna see my favorite host.
Ample thoughts day or night, people shouting but never fighting.
Heading on up to AfterBuzz, gonna hope we don't ramble.
We like those with big fat titties, man, I hope this show ain't shitty.
Come on down to AfterBuzz and meet some hoes of mine.
I wanna be the very
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you catch all the feels from this show. We are South Park Weekly. Over there is Christian Blatt.
Hello, I have a huge American penis. Perhaps during the show I may put it on the desk. Perhaps I may not.
Steph Sabra.
What's up? I have the biggest dick on this table.
That's true. Very true.
Just saying.
I see. Well,
The Japanese identified me early.
interesting. Well, I have an average-sized penis, and I am Phil Svitak.
At least you're honest.
Yes. It's not the size of the ocean, it's the motion in the commotion. I don't know what the hell. What's that saying? Regardless, that's a little preview into what we will be talking about because we're, of course, revisiting Chinpokomon, episode 11 from season 3 that makes fun of Pokemon. Hence why we're playing the Pokemon theme song.
It's crazy that intense of a song is for Pokemon.
Well, you know, did you ever hear like DuckTales and all those intros?
I mean, the
It gets
DuckTales
wild
theme
in
is
the
pretty
Johto.
epic. Yeah.
It gets wild in the Johto region.
That's right. That is the voice of Anthony Becerra, our engineer. Overall, tonight we will be breaking down the episode. Of course, we're gonna break it down in, the number of years that it has since aired. We're going to talk about the craze of actual Pokemon and where it stood in that time period, and then how it kind of stands up today, because Anthony's going to recap some Pokemon news that still exists today. There's the fact that it's still a thing all these years later is insane. First off, let me get your overall thoughts on the episode. Why don't, Steph, why don't we go to you, simply because you suggested this episode, so there's a reason behind it. Why?
I love this episode, and it just worked out that I bought this Pokemon shirt a few weeks ago, and the fact that I can find purpose for it is amazing and makes me realize how great South Park is.
Excellent.
Because they cover everything.
It's not easy to justify a purchase like that, so I'm so glad that we're able to do it. $7. Just think of, you could have bought a sandwich with that.
Where can people buy that shirt if they're looking, like, might as well?
Well, actually, I got it at this really cool thrift store called Second Street on Fairfax.
Okay, good luck getting that shirt again. Thanks. What a letdown. All right, Christian.
I am a big fan of this episode. It was, there's a lot of things about it, rewatching it again, that reminded me why I liked it so much. Because first, they're obviously big fans of Japanese style animation, as we see throughout the course of the episode. And also, to think back, this was almost 18 years ago. Actually, almost 19 years ago. It was more than 18 years ago. So it's almost 19 years. And to think, when I think back when I was watching it, I never would have guessed that 19 years in the future, one, South Park would still be on, and two, like, Pokemon would still be a thing. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy to think about that. But there's a lot of things about the episode in particular, but just sort of overall, it's just an amazing way that they satirized so many things. You know, it's not even that much about Pokemon. It's just the idea of, and yes, they're all kids in the show, but just the way that people follow trends is like, oh no, Cyborg Bill. And it's a great testament to the time that this is from, because when they don't like things, they say, oh, that's gay, that's Liberace gay. And it just takes you back to a time when gay meant bad. And I'm not even saying it's in a good way, it's just, you just don't, you don't get it anymore. You might still get it on South Park. It's the one show you might get it, but it was just so casual the way it was. But just the idea that it was classified as Liberace gay, I remember how much it made me laugh that they were that specific at the time. So it's a great time capsule from 1999.
There's a lot to relate to, right? There's the Pokemon aspect, there's the whole parents and what it means to be a parent and / cool, and also just the idea of cool in general. Mm-hmm. For Kyle, he's trying to continue with the trend, right? When you talk about the trend, he's trying to keep abreast with this whole Pokemon thing, and I remember, like, it's just every week you gotta have something new, and not just Pokemon, but in that time period as a kid. One of the things I want to ask you, Christian, to jump things off with, there's a lot of this notion, and I know this is more towards the end of the episode, but I imagine when you first saw this, you weren't a parent, and now you are a parent.
Yes.
So what's it like thinking that, you know what, if in order to kill something for your child, that all you have to do is like it yourself?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And when I watched this originally 19 years ago, I wasn't a parent that I know of. Now I know I'm a parent, so that I can definitely say unequivocally. And yeah, I mean, it's. I remember thinking back then, it's just like, oh, you think back to when you were a kid, and you're like, oh yeah, if your parents like something, your parents like trying to be like, oh, I like that thing too, and you're like, no, you don't. Like, I remember having an extra ticket to go and see Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and my dad was like, "Oh, I like the." No, you don't. And I was like, "Let me go find a friend." Fortunately, I did, and just the idea that it's like the way they reacted, like, "What are you doing?" You know, they snapped out of their little Japanese trance and all that, and yeah, there's things that my son, you know, he's not even 3 yet, so we're not quite at that point, but you're also just like, right when you start to be like, "Oh, do you want to watch this again?" No. How about DuckTales? I don't like DuckTales anymore. All right, so we'll just go with whatever you want. But yeah, it's as always, watching South Park, there are a lot of life lessons that are going to help me be a better parent. Whatever Randy does in this episode, that's what I'm going to do.
Fair enough. Steph, did you have any moments where your parents got into things that you liked and it's just so cringeworthy for you?
Literally never. They're so boring. They're both in law, and that's what they love. All they do is talk about law, so I guess that's why I'm not in law.
Did you see section 4-2 of the annulment?
No, we used to joke like that. We're like, what's in the penal code, Mom? Like, so immature.
Good old.
Oh my God, that's because it's just like penis.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Your parents sound like fun.
Thanks. Nah.
They should be on this show.
Oh my gosh. They wouldn't know where to start, you guys.
All right, well, let me ask you guys about this Pokemon, right? We opened up the show. We didn't think that Pokemon could survive, and yet we have Pokemon Go, and Anthony's going to introduce us to the latest thing about to happen with Pokemon. But the obsession. Do you guys remember the Stop talking about your penis. We're not talking about your penis, okay?
I'm talking about Steph's penis, but yeah.
Oh, okay. That's okay then.
Listen, save the penis stuff for later. We already had a penile joke already. All right.
Can never have too many, though, so keep it up, Anthony.
Oh, boy. But I'm bunching. All right. But the obsession with Pokemon, I mean, were you guys into this? What was the fascination? I mean, I understand it to a degree. I'm like, if I had the time, I do like the games, but beyond like the trading card games and so forth, that's just a little bit of waste of my time.
I was purely into like the aesthetics of it. Like, I loved the cards and how it looked. And I have Japanese relatives, and my grandma was actually the first ones to give us some cards and stuff because she knew it was a Japanese like run company. But I never got like, my brother would have a full baseball trading card case, you know, those that you could put the cards in, of Pokemon, and I just never got the competitiveness of it. I thought it was more just like fun.
I was 23 years old when this episode so of course I was all in on the Pokemon. No, it was just something that I was aware of from afar, and you know, I had seen lots of things come and go when I was a kid. There, you know, I wanted to have as many garbage pail kids as is humanly possible, so I certainly understood that. I just think that it's smart because it combined, as we even see in the episode, it's like there's cards, there's figures, there's games, you know, and there's, you know, you can even go to the camp. So I think that, you know, that level of cross promotion, we see a lot more now, you know, where there's like a little bit of everything. So it was one of those things that I think a lot of other properties learned. Like, you know, Disney certainly learned a few things from the Pokemon takeover.
Well, pure numbers, right? Just including just the video games themselves. This is the number for all cumulative games, but 300 million copies of video games and Pokemon sold. Get
That's
ready to hit
crazy.
an even crazier button because all-out gross revenues as of March 2017, so we're slightly a year behind in terms of the full reporting. All merchandise accounts for $55.15 billion. That's a lot.
That's a lot of dollars.
I'm sick.
Let me, okay.
Over
Let me just to show you the difference. How long do you think a million seconds is?
too long.
It's about 8 days, right? Give or take 8 days, right? So
Too long.
8 days, right?
Okay.
How much is a billion seconds?
16 days.
32 months. That's the difference between a million and a billion, and this thing has made 55 freaking billion.
Jesus. What?
That's so much. That's so much money.
I thought
So
this.
much math.
How did they get? There were so many different competing companies like Pokemon at the time, kind of like Neopets, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh, Digimon was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, I remember.
And then, why did Pokemon just? Well, that's good
I
news.
can.
Yeah,
Hopefully
okay.
everyone else can.
I
Yeah.
loved Digimon.
Just to repeat that, Digimon is still around as well. Yeah.
Thank God.
I was beginning to be nervous. Well, I mean, what's interesting is that they tie in that fad, and also like as a superpower, Japan was kind of coming into its own, and I understand they're not the same, but they've dealt with a lot of Asian uprising on the show. Like if you look at the Chinese Olympics and whatnot, they were very fearful apparently of Asia.
Yeah, I thought this was really interestingly written because it's almost like the Pokemon thing was at the forefront, and then they somehow were able to like seamlessly tie in the Japanese plot, the back plot of it. You know, like I think they got way more. They got pretty political for what it was generally, what it started as with like penis jokes and kind of just.
Well, I think you're right, and where it stems from is I think it's making fun of this idea that we as a nation are getting so comfortable with ourselves that we're, the fact that we literally value ourselves in such a way, and even our dick sizes just automatically are bigger than, of course, anyone else.
Yeah, that's actually.
Where do you go?
Actually, that was based on a true story. Matt and Trey went to visit a friend, but this was actually in China, I believe. And the guy that they met kept talking about how small his penis was and how lucky they were that they had American penis size. And so they were like, we got to put that in a show.
I mean, in a sense, let me ask you, is it why all the Asian women are getting with the American boys?
I mean, my wife's Chinese, so that's really all I need to say.
High five.
From way over here.
And oh my gosh.
What? It's just, it always comes back to my penis, not anyone else's. It's just mine. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's great. When we were talking about political figures in South Park episodes a couple months ago, this was one that I thought of because President Clinton at the end is, he gives that statement where he's just like, well, the, Japanese emperor assured me that my penis is very large and probably the biggest. And it's just like, that's a commentary on us as Americans, but also a commentary on President Clinton. And it was such a simpler time when Bill Clinton was our president. But to what you were saying sort of about the way that, America was all very, very full of ourselves and just like, well, we can't do no wrong. I thought I'd bring the mood down a little bit and point out that this was almost 2 years before 9/11. So this was like, it was like, ain't nobody gonna stop us now, So we were really full of ourselves, and things changed a little later, but it's one of the many ways in which it's fun to go back and think of a very simpler time with Chinpokomon.
Absolutely. I mean, think of all we were doing is trying to catch them all. That was our biggest.
That is such a good slogan.
I mean, it's such a Americanized version because the Japanese don't have that slogan. It became an American slogan. So it's funny how we just take something so novel and brilliant and just commercialize the hell out of it.
I talked about the time period in which this episode aired, and it reminds me that my friends and I had a similar phrase about how we had to catch them all. And I'll let you know that I did indeed get every venereal disease possible when I was in college. So I was very proud of myself. Don't worry, I'm clean now. You can still sit next to me. I caught them all.
And on that note, Anthony, what do you got for us in terms of the new game that is coming out for Pokemon?
Oh, is this happening already? Okay.
Do you
let me
need to
make
do
sure,
more research?
Let me make sure everyone can hear me real quick.
I hope they can.
Yes,
Why are you so worried? We hear you fine.
Because then it's just awkward seeing you guys just like trying to listen to me.
Oh.
All right. So I have this trailer here.
All right, so
It
we're
was
watching
released
Pokemon.
about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And it's a new Pokemon game. So it's actually called Pokemon Let's Go, and it's Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So it's 2 different types of games, but they're practically the same thing. Just the starter Pokemon is different. And so it focuses. It's kind of like a reimagining, a reboot of the original games. It actually focuses on the original Kanto region, which is 151 of the original Pokemon. And they used Pokemon Yellow version as a base and inspiration for this. And you get to choose either Pikachu or Eevee, and they hang around like on top of you while like you're playing and stuff. And one of the cool parts is they're implementing it for the Switch, and it incorporates Pokemon Go in a bunch of different ways, which is the mobile Pokemon game where you just capture Pokemon. So you can actually capture Pokemon in the mobile game and then transfer them to your Switch account, which is what we're seeing right now. And this is interesting, that Pokeball. So it actually replaces what they had the Pokemon Go Plus, which is like a little attachment that you bought and you can like have like attached to your belt, and then you could walk around and your Pokemon will like be trained. So they made it into a Pokeball. And then you can take that with you, and it will train your Pokemon while you're like out and about in the real world. And then it all just connects together, and it's pretty fun because on the Switch you can actually use a Pokeball itself to throw at not actually throw at your TV, but like pretend to throw at your TV, and you catch Pokemon like that. As well as a drop-in co-op, which I think you're gonna see right here, and also you guys trade things together. There's a bunch of things going around. It's super innovative. Like Nintendo has always been a master of innovation with their consoles and like really all aspects of their consoles. So it's a brilliant move by them, and I cannot wait for this because I'm down to play this.
I like the outfit changes.
And the outfit changes, yeah. You can customize Pikachu or Eevee for some reason, which is always fun. But
When
yeah.
Christian speaks of a simpler time, let me use an analogy from Pokemon. My nutsack can only carry 6 Pokeballs.
Oh my god.
This seems like 10 too many.
Okay,
it's
nutsack could
wonderful,
carry
but it's
10
just too much.
Pokeballs.
Well, he said only 6. I mean, that's
Or
realistic.
6.
10 would be too many. By the way, Pikachu never caught them all. He only had gonorrhea, so that's something that should make you feel okay if you find him when you're out. Just, maybe put on a glove first. Before we move on in the episode, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite things about the episode, rewatching it again, and I think it's the first time they did it. The fake commercials that are like real, the completely non-animated, and each of them is, each one is, they just get better and better. The Wild Wacky Action bike, I remember seeing that for the first time. The bike the bike that you can't ride. But Alabama Man is the one that I laughed out loud rewatching it, but I remember watching this the first time, just how funny it was, which was like, just kids like, I told you to shut up, bitch. And of course, and I don't know, I thought that Alabama Man, it was pretty amazing. Just the fact that it was like, it's an animated series, but who cares? Here's some fake commercials. And I don't know, I always thought that was a great way that Trey and Matt weren't really held down by the show being a half-hour cartoon. And I think just the way that they were evaluating what the kids thought of them. But the commercials themselves are amongst my favorite things from South Park, especially in the early years.
I agree, and when they do the different type of animation, especially with like when we just get the Pokemon characters, you forget that they aren't limited to just the South Park animation, because they just take you into this different realm when you're watching it, and then you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, like the World of Warcraft episode. You're like, whoa, look at what they can do. Yeah.
Exactly.
I agree. Speaking of that, it's interesting to know how Toys R Us has gone out of business in the United States, and what a sad day. I don't want to live. This is just depressing me. Let me get you guys
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, but I don't
want Amazon.
I don't want Amazon Prime. I
They
don't want to
shop
grow
on their
up.
iPads.
I want to be a Toys R Us kid, but I can't anymore because I'm 42. But also because there's no Toys R Us.
All right, let me guys get your final thoughts, whatever that may be, on the episode. Just because I'm getting depressed.
Steph, you first.
I just love this episode. I like when they have like really like palpable pop culture references or literal characters put in, and I love the Japanese twist, obviously.
Japanese.
There are a couple of little things in the episode, and by little things, I'm referring to basically the one Japanese guy who pulls down his pants, and like, your penis can't possibly be that small, and then everybody's like, oh. But in the beginning, Cartman's cat, who we used to see in pretty much every, no, kitty, like, it was such an important part of the show early on, and then you're just like, oh yeah, that was just something that they did away with, and good for them that they didn't keep telling the same jokes every week. But that was one of the things that I thought was fun to see, and I really liked the live action stewardess lady. I'm not even quite sure what to call her. There was just like, would tell them like, and then you bomb the harbor. Just sort of the very matter of fact way that they told all those things, and it's just little things. I was talking about how Wacky Action Bike and Alabama Man were two things that stuck with me from the episode, but. I believe it's Mr. Garrison who in this episode says, Jesus tap dancing Christ. And I remember for all the time since then, so almost 20 years, I will still occasionally bust that out, conversationally. And I forgot that this is where I took it from. So
is that where that line came from?
I've never heard it before.
Because I've heard people say that, and I've wondered.
But when it was said on the show, I had never heard it before. And then the final thing is, how Kenny has the seizures. That's actually like based in reality, because there was a problem with the show before it ever came over to the United States. There were too many like bright white flashing lights, so kids freaked out from it. And of course, there were this is like years before Pokemon was ever in the United States. So of course people hear that and they're like, well, that show that made kids pass out, we got to get that. Now it was edited differently, and they it never looked like that, and they stopped showing it that way in Japan. It was too much. And so I thought it was funny that they incorporated that, that was what happened to Kenny. So I just thought it was I thought I'd give the little historical context there as the old man here.
I love it when you do that.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. For me, I just loved all the little aspects. Like, again, when Kyle comes over and he's ready to play, all of a sudden he doesn't have the specific Chinpokomon game controller, and
Poor Kyle.
He's out of the loop, speaking of which, one of the running gags has always been, here's something I learned today, and one of the things that, Mr. Broflovski says to him, like, hey, listen, this is just a fad, and it'll go away. Thanks, Dad. Now let me tell you how the real world works.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer.
So there you go. Yeah, I'm sure he has a lot of great penile jokes, doesn't he? All right. And with that, have we learned something today? Gosh, I hope not. But if we've learned anything, it's that it's never the size of your penis, as long as it's bigger than who you're competing against. And I think that's...
Or in my case, bigger, longer, and uncut.
Oh my...
That's a South Park reference.
Of course.
Yeah, come on.
On behalf of @Christian DMZ, that's Christian.
That's me. And, if you want that kind of insight, you can catch the Trump Report Tuesdays at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern here on AfterBuzz TV.
I heard the Washington Post came out with the study. He had the literal world's smallest penis.
Yes, and you could tell by the size of his hands. That's how we knew. That was the first clue that we ever had.
@Steph Sabra.
You can follow. That's just a really bad image, but you can follow me @Steph Sabra on Instagram and Twitter for better images than Donald Trump's orange penis.
And I'm Phil Sweetek. Thank you guys as always. @Tony. What's your thing, Tony? Tony B what?
Tony B Tony _.
Okay. That's a lot of Tonys and a lot of underscores. But hey, we'll go with it. Thank you guys, and you know what? Lots of South Park to look forward to with us in our South Park Weekly. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more for you, and certainly a lot more of Pokemon if you're interested. So until next time, bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.